when you're either buying car parts to fix your car or when you're paying someone else to fix your car. That a company sent me to try out. They could have done a better job on the label because I can't even read it anymore, so I don't even remember who sent me this thing. It's not like they're hand soldering them like they did back in the days when making a radiator was a much more complex process.
A few months ago, I walked into a Toyota dealership and asked for a radiator replacement quote. The service writer handed me a sheet, $459 for the radiator, $285 for the cooling fan. I smiled because I knew I had a package coming in the mail, a radiator/fan combo I bought online for under $100. It bolted right in, worked flawlessly, and saved me hundreds. In this video, I'll walk you step by step through how I pulled it off and why dealerships hate when you know this trick.
When you're either buying car parts to fix your car or when you're paying someone else to fix your car. That's why they're using plastic aluminum radiators. Are so cheap to manufacture.
Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. What if I told you the $700 part your dealer sells might come from the same factory as the $100 version online? For years, drivers have been told that original dealer parts are on another level. Better materials, stricter testing, more dependable performance. It's what keeps so many people hooked on the OEM stamp, even if it means draining their savings when something breaks. That trust is powerful, but the reality hiding behind it is much less glamorous. Those pricey parts with shiny labels often share the same assembly line as the cheaper alternatives you can grab online.
Own area because they're ripping you off there. Now, another common thing that people get ripped off on is radiators. It's not like they're hand soldering them like they did back in the days when making a radiator was a much more complex process.
The difference isn't in the metal or the plastic, it's in the packaging and the story you're sold. Take the radiator scenario. At the dealership counter, the quote for a replacement was over $700 once the radiator and fan were combined. The parts sat behind the counter in neat boxes with brand logos, protective wraps, and official labels that gave them an air of superiority. But at the same time, there was a version being shipped from an online warehouse for under $100, and both came from the same type of automated facility where machines crimp aluminum and plastic components together with precision.
That a company sent me to try out. They could have done a better job on the label because I can't even read it anymore, so I don't even remember who sent me this thing. I haven't had any problems with them. You know, they're all made by machines. Plastic top, plastic bottom, aluminum metal, and machines crimp.
The cheaper kit went into a car without any trouble, and here's the kicker, it ran flawlessly for years. If you've ever wondered why that is possible, it's because the majority of major parts producers supply both the branded OEM lines and the generic equivalents. It's a common practice in the industry. A single manufacturer may ship one batch to a dealer network dressed in a branded box, and another batch to warehouse distributors in plain packaging. That separation lets dealers mark up the exact same hardware with a fat profit margin. To the untrained eye, they appear to be two entirely different products with a massive gap in quality, but it's mostly presentation. So why do people fall for the OEM only mindset? Fear plays a big role. The thought of a repair failing on the road is enough to push car owners toward whatever feels safest, even when the facts don't support it. There's also heavy branding at work. When you see a factory name paired with a dealership logo, your brain connects it with authority and trust. And of course, dealerships remind you constantly that they only use OEM parts. The message is clear: if you choose anything else, you're gambling with reliability. Yet the everyday experience of mechanics who install both branded and non-branded versions shows a very different picture.
Now, I know it was made in China, but I've been buying Chinese-made radiators for over 30 years. It's a radiator. It came with the fan assembly and the fan, and the whole thing was less than $100.
The packaging trick is a perfect example. Imagine two identical compressors. One arrives in a box covered with official markings, and the other shows up in a plain cardboard carton. Nothing else has changed inside, but one will cost hundreds more simply because of that label. What customers really pay for is the story, not the substance. And for most people, that story is convincing enough to accept the huge markup without asking hard questions. Now, here's the most telling part. Those so-called cheap radiators aren't cutting corners corners in ways that actually matter. They're built by the same automated processes, which means consistency is built into every unit. At worst, you might have to adjust a bracket or drill a hole to align it during installation. Once installed though, they last for years without any drama. The idea that every non-dealer part is suspect simply doesn't hold up when you look at the results. So when the $100 assembly cools an engine just as effectively as the $700 dealer unit, the myth starts to collapse. And that leaves a much bigger question hanging. If the same factories pump out both versions, what else are we still paying sky-high prices for without realizing it? Ever paid thousands for a so-called urgent repair, only to later find out the car could have kept running just fine? It's a frustrating reality for many drivers, and it happens far more often than people realize. The truth is, not every strange smell, faint leak, or weak system means you need to authorize a dealer to dig deep into your wallet. Yet the way the situation is presented to you in the service lane can make it feel as if you have no choice at all. Dealers and even independent shops know how to frame a minor defect so it sounds like a safety hazard, and in that moment, most car owners panic. The result is thousands spent on jobs that, in many cases, never needed to be done. Take the example of a small oil seep around the valve cover. You pop into the dealership for a routine inspection and the technician calls you over. They show you the shiny wet outline where a tiny amount of oil has pushed past the gasket. Immediately, you're told major work is necessary, often involving tearing down the top of the engine, replacing seals, and paying high labor hours. The recommended bill can run into the 4-figure range, and the language makes it sound like ignoring it puts your engine at risk of catastrophic failure. But here's the reality. If you're not seeing oil dripping onto your driveway, not smelling burnt oil, and not noticing smoke from under the hood, the car is still completely roadworthy. That slow seep is a characteristic of aging engines, not a death sentence. You could keep driving for years without issue, checking the oil level occasionally, and never deal with it until you actually want to. Now let's shift to another area where costs explode unnecessarily: the air conditioning system. Imagine the AC in your car starts blowing warm air on a hot afternoon. You take it in, and the dealer quickly points to a failed compressor and condenser, giving you a neat printed estimate for nearly $2,000. The urgency is emphasized. You'll need this done right away if you want cold air. But here's what happens behind the curtain. Modern cars hold small amounts of refrigerant, and even a partial loss can leave you sweating in stop-and-go traffic. In many cases, the poor performance is caused by low refrigerant, not a broken compressor. A single $10 recharge canister bought from a parts store with a built-in gauge can bring the system back to life instantly. You simply connect it, watch the needle move into the green zone, and the vents start blowing ice cold again. There's even a common telltale sign. If your air conditioning works perfectly in the morning but fades later in the afternoon after the car sits in the sun, that's the #1 indicator the system is low on refrigerant. The unit itself isn't broken, it just doesn't have enough pressure to handle the heat load. Ignoring that detail and signing off on a full compressor and condenser replacement is the difference between spending $10 and spending $2,000. Dealers are banking on the fact most people won't challenge that diagnosis. Expensive dealer pricing and rushed repair recommendations depend on fear more than fact. By making every issue sound urgent, shops keep customers from questioning high quotes or inflated part costs. Yet proven alternatives exist: factory-sourced components and plain packaging, and low-cost fixes that solve problems without emptying wallets. That's why you should always slow down before saying yes. Get a second opinion, check if aftermarket options are available, and try the simple solutions first. By doing this, you protect yourself from inflated bills. Remember, skipping one unnecessary $700 repair leaves money where it belongs, in your pocket for what truly matters.